Hope everybody had a nice holiday. Um, the reason I chose sort of this topic for open office tonight was because I think this holiday season, holiday seasons in general, are stressful for everybody, but they're far more stressful for people who are empaths. And I'm an empath, and yeah, I struggle. I struggle with some of the things that are going on with the holidays that make it sometimes challenging for me to be in a place and to sort of be participatory. So I thought, I know there's other people out there who are like me. I know there are a lot of them. They're my clients. They're my peer groups, the healers, the therapists. Um, you know, everybody tends to be empathic, and the problem with and empathy is about being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel their anger, feel their joy, feel their sadness. But empaths are different. Empaths struggle with the overload and the difficulty that comes from blocking what comes at you. And how do you manage that if you're an empath? Approximately 25% of the population or more are empaths. Women tend to be more so than men, but I'm seeing that shift. I'm definitely seeing that change as men become much more aware of their intuitive nature and their sort of softer, more feminine side, and are able to own it, as well as on the masculine side of themselves too. So I'm definitely seeing more men becoming much more aware of the fact that they are empaths and that they pick up a lot of information, some of which they want and some of which they don't. There are three primary types of empaths. There's the physical empath, the emotional empath, and the intuitive. And some people are all three. I tend to be all of them. But I'll go into what each one is sort of all about, and we'll talk about some examples too. The physical empath picks up other people's symptoms, what they're feeling in their body. As an example, somebody steps into a pair of heels that are not theirs, and all of a sudden they start getting information like, oh, I didn't eat right today, or I really am hungry and I need to go get something to eat because you borrowed a pair of heels, say to have a dress hem or something, and you're picking up that kind of information. But you can also pick up more than just something like that, just stepping into someone's shoes. You could definitely pick up what the symptoms are all about. I have students, clients who are challenged when they go into the grocery store because they walk by somebody and they go, prostate cancer, somebody else, bad gallbladder. You know, they get the hearing part of it, but they also get sometimes the physical symptoms. And that can be kind of distressing, especially if you don't want those kinds of physical symptoms. You don't want to feel those in your body, and they could be really distressful. So lots of times the people who are physical empaths tend to be the healers, physicians, physical therapists, and also animals. Sometimes people are physical empaths with animals. They make wonderful animal communicators, great vets, vet assistants, because they're able to pick up on what is going on with the animal physically, and may just know sort of in their own body what's actually going on with the animal. So the physical empaths struggle with that kind of information. And who wants to know that the person standing next to you, you know, is struggling with breast cancer or is healing from a biopsy, or, you know, their gallbladder is acting up? I mean, that's a lot of information, especially if you're feeling those symptoms in your physical body. So that's one kind. And that can be challenging unless you can use it in a positive way. Now, I'm a physical empath because I pick up other people's symptoms when I'm doing a medical intuitive reading. So, but I don't hold on to them. I get the symptom and then it goes right through me because I have no interest in hanging on to someone else's symptoms. It serves me at the time when I'm doing the reading, but after that, you know, I want it gone. I don't want that. I don't want to hold that in my physical body. The emotional empaths, these are the people who are apt to work as social workers or therapists, nurses, moms. Moms tend to be emotional empaths. And the emotional empaths, it's all about knowing what other people feel. And if it's a great feeling, yay. But if it's not a great feeling, if it's depression or suicidal ideation or self-shaming, or, I don't look good today, nobody wants me, no one's interested in me, I shouldn't work in this area anymore, nobody likes me, those kinds of feelings, that's a lot of negative feeling and a lot of negative self-talk. So those kinds of feelings when you're an emotional empath, again, can be overwhelming because it's like, what do I do with them? And first of all, you have to kind of know what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you. And it's usually when something comes out of the clear blue sky that you didn't expect. You're walking along, you're having a great day, and then all of a sudden you just feel sort of this overwhelming grief or overwhelming anger. And you just passed somebody, or you just sat next to somebody on the plane or in an auditorium at a conference or something, and you're like, whoa, this does not belong to me. This has to belong to somebody else. But it usually comes out of nowhere, and that's usually the tip-off that it doesn't belong to you, that you suddenly change in terms of having a good day, and all of a sudden, whoa, why would I be feeling so depressed and so full of grief? That's not me. My day has been great. My family's good. Everything's fine in my life. So that's when it belongs to other people. Now, the intuitive empath tends to get information in various ways. They tend to be clairaudient, which means they hear things in their head. Clairvoyant, which means they see things. They tend to pick up the emotional pieces with people, the physical pieces. They're apt to get information in dreams, and they may just know. They tend to have a fairly creative visual life, if you will, because they get information from so many vantage points that kind of all comes in and converges in a very creative, eclectic, frequently very visual way, sometimes with stories and things like that. So those are the three primary emotional the three primary those are the three primary empath types. And maybe you see yourself in one of those, more than one of those. I have, like I said, have all three, and have since I was a child, since I was about 4 or 5. And of course, didn't know what to do with it, and struggled most of my life trying to keep it out, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where it lives. I don't know how it would serve me, until later in my life, when I'm like, okay, I've got to take a look at this and figure out what this is all about, because it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But that's just my story. Other people, sometimes people are born this way, and they just come in and they're an empath. And I frequently see that in people's astrology charts when I'm doing life path readings for people. They have a very prominent Neptune in their chart that has a very strong interaction with either their sun or their moon in their chart, and it's clearly right there. And so it manifests in ways that open them up to these kinds of empathic pathways. The other way that people are apt to develop one of these three types, or all, is where there's been early trauma. And that's usually when there's been emotional abuse, physical abuse, growing up in an alcoholic or addicted household, growing up in a household where you were screamed at all the time and told that you were bad, and told that, be heard and not seen. I'm sorry, seen and not heard. That's how that one goes. And that essentially your defenses get worn down, because all this negative energy and all this shaming and oppression, so to speak, wears your defenses down, so you don't have the ability to cope in the way in which other people are able to cope in the world, because the defenses have been worn down by all the conditioning that you've been through and the experiences that you've been through. So being born that way, or having some sort of early trauma where your defenses are worn down, are the ways in which the empathic qualities are apt to come through. Now, essentially the goal of the empath is to feel safe and protected, and we all want to feel safe and protected. But my experience working with people who are empaths of all types is the tendency is to want to be out of their body, because they don't want to feel it. They don't want to feel the symptoms. They don't want to feel the emotions. They don't want the information. So there's this tendency to sort of be more out of their body. And that's a problem, because then if you're not in your body, you truly are not present, and you can't manage these types of situations well if you're not in your body. So you say, okay, so how do you stay in your body, or how do you get yourself in your body? Well, you do grounding exercises, such as visualizing that you're a tree and the trunk is here, this is the trunk of the tree, and then down through your legs are the roots of the tree, and they grow into the earth, and they grow over the rocks, and they grow over the ledge that's underneath the ground, and they go deeper and deeper and deeper. And you see that happening within your body, so that you can connect to the ground, you can connect to what's going on in your physical body, and you're really present. Especially like if you're flying or something, you really need to be present, especially when you're in large groups and there's a lot going on around you. So that's a really essential point. There's tons of YouTube videos on grounding. You could Google it, and you'll get all kinds of different ones about different ways to ground and different guided meditations. I didn't sort of want to take time for that in this session. So that's one of the ways in which to do it. The other way, of course, is to identify what the triggers are. And most of us have been around the block long enough, at least as an adult, maybe not so much as a child. And that's more of a challenge for moms and dads with children who are very empathic and really connect to what's going on with other kids around them. They're going to need your help and your support, that's for sure. Because the empaths tend to encounter and have a much lower tolerance for the following things. Large groups. They wouldn't do well at concerts. They wouldn't do well at large gatherings, like probably took place over the course of this last holiday get-together. They're the kind of person who always takes their own car to an event so that they can leave when they want to. So that when they're starting to feel overwhelmed by all the energy in the room, both positive and negative, they at least have the opportunity to take themselves home, or to get themselves out of there, or to even just go out and take a break, try to reground themselves, and then come back into whatever the get-together is. They also don't do well with confusion. So if you're in a confusing environment, such as an airport, which is probably one of the most confusing areas I know of, they don't do well with all the hustle bustle and the people coming and going, because you're picking up the energy or the emotions or more of all the people around them, the people that are sitting there, the people that are delayed, the people who slept on the floor all night because they missed their flight. Confusion is a real problem for people who are empathic. Noise is also a problem. So bright lights, big concert halls, even being in a nightclub, being in a bar would be challenging. You're up to see them on the sidelines. They're way kind of tucked in the corner, back to the wall, so that they can perceive sort of what's coming their way, and they can back out if they need to. But noise is definitely a problem. They just don't have the tolerance for these kinds of things that the rest of the world seems to have. And these are the things that we all have to encounter in our world. It's, it is what it is. We have a very challenging, energetic world that we live in. The other, of course, is negative energy. And a lot of people, from politicians to family members to spouses to children, can carry negative energy. And they don't do well with that kind of energy projected toward them. They tend to not do well with situations where there's confrontation, where there's anger, and when there's shaming. Those are really challenging because it brings out their emotion, but they're also picking up the emotions of the person who is projecting this kind of energy at them. Stress is a problem. These people don't do well in high stress situations. They wouldn't do well, say, as an ER nurse. That would be too much stress. They might be better served doing something like working maybe as a paralegal, where there's more control, stress, but there's more control, and it's not as crazy as, say, an ER kind of environment. And stress for one of them what's stress for you may not be stress for me, and vice versa. So everybody's ability to manage stress, they have to decide which kind of stress is really the ones that trigger for them. Violence is another area. They tend to not want to watch the news. They tend to not want to watch movies about war, killing, the horror movies. You know, they're all on the Hallmark Channel. That's where they want to be. Because they feel it. They take the feeling in of what's being projected on the screen. And that's a real challenge. The news is a real challenge too, because there's so much negativity. I was talking with a group that I've worked with for 20 years tonight. We were all talking about how the news is getting to be just too much. And we'll get the highlights of the day, and that's it. We're done. Lots of times people say to me, did you hear what happened today? And I'm like, no, I didn't check the news, because I don't do that because of all the negativity that's out there, and I choose not to connect to it. Try to get into it once a week just so I kind of get the lay of the land. But people feel like I'm kind of out of the loop, and in many ways I am on the upcoming news front, because I don't follow that type of negativity. I don't follow the, everything that's happening in the world kind of thing. They're also apt to have what they could call a social hangover, that when they leave a big event, they feel exhausted, they feel wiped out, and they can't rebound as easily as somebody else who doesn't have the empathic qualities. And so they're sort of left feeling like, ugh, I've got this awful feeling all about me, and it's all the information that they've picked up while they've been in, let's say, a large social gathering. They may tend to be overgivers. They're the kind of person who everybody goes to because you'll listen. Everybody will come sit down and tell you their problems, and you sit there and you give and you give and you give and you give, to the point where burnout can actually occur. And that's one of the major problems, both physically as well as emotionally, for empaths, is they tend to burn out much quicker, much sooner, and with a much lower level of stress than the rest of the world. The rest of the world sort of seems to sort of have this bubble around themselves that empaths don't seem to have. And I'm going to talk about sort of doing that in a minute and give you some different kinds of examples. And there also tend to be people who have multiple sensitivities: food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, drug sensitivities. I have sensitivities to almost every narcotic. Just makes me throw up. So I just list them all as being a sensitivity and an allergy, because that's what happens to me all the time. I don't like medication anyway, and I'm the person who almost always gets the side effects. So that's one of the reasons I prefer to work in alternative therapy as opposed to traditional therapies. And the way in which that most of them tend to cope is they cope through isolation. And they cope through isolation and avoidance. Now, do I isolate myself? I do, just because of the nature of my work. I work out of my home, so I don't have to go out on the road or go to an office kind of thing. So yes, so I do have some isolating qualities to myself. I'm happy in my home. I'm happy in my environment. And I don't necessarily feel a need to go out and be part of, some huge event. I definitely do. I was at an event last night down in Boston, and it was lovely and it was great, but it was a small group of like 8 people, and it was lovely. But that's my preference. My preference is not for large groups, because I'm the person on the side. If I go into a bar to have a drink with somebody, I'm the person at the very far table, because I feel safer and I feel more protected, with something at my back, and sort of being able to sort of manage the energy of what's around me. So what do you do with people like this? How do empaths manage what they have to deal with? Because it's like overkill. These people have definite overkill. The biggest thing to do first is to identify the triggers. And this is true for children as well as for adults. So you really need to be sensitive to, when I was in that job, I find it really, really hard, because of A, B, C, and D. You need to know, is it, large groups, small groups? Is it the kind of groups? Is it the energy that's being projected? Family events, especially at the holidays, can be really challenging because, Uncle Joe is Uncle Joe, and Uncle Joe is not going to change. And the only thing you can change is you and how you manage that energy, especially if it's negative energy or energy that just doesn't feel good to you. You're going to need to find some quiet time. You're probably going to need more time to decompress, like if you come home from a large event or you come home from work and it's been a really stressful day. They tend to need more time and space. So if they want to go to their room or, they want to go take a hot bath, that's what they need to do so that they can kind of let all the energy go that they've picked up. Exercise is really important. Any type of physical exercise, whether it's gardening or snow shoveling or walking or running or weight training or whatever, it's a great way to release negative energy because first of all, you're in your body. So you have to be grounded. You can't be doing, weight training and stuff like that and not really paying attention. So exercise is super important. The connection to the natural world and to the animal kingdom is also important. Excuse me. Nature has the way of kind of absorbing all that we've taken in all day long, and it just kind of takes us away. Now, obviously, it's January 1st, so you can't go walking on the grass with your feet because it's too cold out there. Lots of places don't have grass these days. It's 2 and 3 feet of snow. So doing things that are outside, even if it's just getting out for a 5-minute walk, or parking your car way at the end of the parking lot before you go to the mall and walking in, at least you're outside. Maybe not a lot of trees and things like that, but at least you're outside and you're in your physical body and you're using your physical body. The other way in which a lot of empaths can manage what they have to deal with is through animal connection. They may have 2 and 3 dogs, 2 and 3 cats. They may work at the vets. They may volunteer to dog walk. Animals have a wonderful way of absorbing the energy that's too much for us. And they actually sort of are able to kind of take it away. So grounding is really the best that you can do. That's other than identifying your triggers and being sensitive to them and knowing, oh, this is not a good situation for me. I need to remove myself or I need to do something to manage the situation so that I don't wind up feeling terrible, by staying in the situation. Shielding is probably the biggest. And shielding, it can be done in so many different ways. My landscape architects shield using an imaginary dome of bramble bushes, so thick that you can't see through it. My private investigators use bulletproof glass. Teenagers, they're apt to use a shield from one of the video games that they're playing, or they see themselves surrounded by the strongest person in the video game, who's the hero in the video game. So that they're totally seeing themselves totally surrounded by the men with the shield and the sword and the whatever, protecting them. And what we think, what we intend is as solid as the wall in front of you. And don't kid yourself that intention is just hogwash. It is not. It is not. I show people with dowsing rods when I'm teaching how you can project a wall, and then when you go with the dowsing rods toward the wall, when you hit it, the rods will either cross or they'll open. And students are amazed. They're like, oh, no, 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 no. And then I make them put their own wall up someplace different and use the grounding rods. And, jaws are dropping. They're like, wow, wow. So shielding is super important. My sci-fi kind of people, sometimes they'll use Superman's cape, or they might even use kryptonite. It depends on, what you think is within your knowledge base and in your ability to visualize what you think is the most protective shield that you could possibly put up. And it's like a dome that's around you. And it puts the energy back from where it came so that it doesn't come into you and you don't have to hold on to it. I always tell people to kind of put a volume control in there, and you can never turn it lower than your own safety. Never, never. But you can always turn it up to let more information in. And then when you get your information, you turn it back down again. There are some other things other than shielding you can do. Water is a wonderful releaser of negative energy and negative thought forms. Epsom salts baths are really great if you have a bathtub. I don't. But using water after you've been at some sort of an event and you just don't feel very good afterwards can be a great way to kind of take care of it. Stones, crystals, I have them like everywhere. I've got them in the four corners of my office. I've got them in my living room. They're a wonderful absorber of energy. And I think citrine is probably one of the nicest ones, because to me, its whole purpose is to clear your energy field and to get rid of anything that you've picked up that doesn't really belong to you. But everybody's different in terms of what crystals they are attracted to. Some quartz crystal, I've got mine on. I wear this all the time. It's a piece of rutilated quartz. And this helps to keep my field clear. And I wear this all the time, that and my angel. But everybody's different. Some people, you could have rose quartz, could be that kind of energy for you. And so you just sort of have to play a little, and you have to see if you can find what works for you. But the whole goal is to feel safe and protected. And you have to start setting limits with other people in your life who don't get it, who don't have these issues, who don't have problems with groups or confusion or noise or negative energy, and who are like, just blow it off. It's like, you're going to have to set some limits with these people in your life who don't get it. And so that you can set some boundaries to keep yourself feeling safe and protected and secure. And that's not the easiest thing to do, because if they don't get it, lots of times there's some shaming that's going on. Why can't you get it? Why can't you go to this large group? Why is it always such a problem for you? You need to get over this. You need to man up. You need to not be so sensitive. You need to get over that. That is not helpful at all. You need people to see you and need people to meet you where you are. And so that's a real challenge, to get people in your life to see that, feel that, and to give you the space to do what you need to do. So that's my January 2nd take on empaths. I just thought it was important because of the time of year, and we've just come out of a very stressful period with all the festivities and get-togethers, and it's really hard. And I know it's hard for empaths particularly, and that's why I kind of wanted to address it. And I'll probably also do a blog on it this month too, because I think it's just that important. And that the blog will have some additional information about, the kinds of things that you can do for yourself, and in a more concrete form other than just this video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I see some people waving to me here on Instagram. John, thank you. A couple of other people. Great. Lovely. Glad you could join in. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to, pop me an email. I'm always happy to answer quick questions. That's kind of what Open Office was really sort of all about. But I'm also finding that I'm finding myself talking about topics that I think are pertinent to what's going on in the world and the times that we're living in, which are challenging times. So anyway, I hope all you empaths enjoyed. And like I said, drop me a line if you have a quick question. I'd be happy to answer it. And 2 weeks from now, I'm doing, I think I'm doing Aquarius. I just finished Capricorn. So Aquarius is the next one I'm talking about. So the moms, dads, family members who have children being born under the sign of Aquarius will have some ideas of the joys and the challenges of babies being born under that under the sign of Aquarius. So hopefully you'll join me in 2 weeks, 8 o'clock, same time. And now everything's going to be done on YouTube and Instagram. So I'm doing both at the same time. Didn't really find Facebook Live worked all that well. And I think this is a much better platform. And it actually even feels energetically better to me. So that's the other reason I'm doing it this way as well. So have a great 2019, and hopefully I'll see a couple of you in a couple of weeks. Great. Bye.